President Guaidó, it's truly an honor to host you. We have hosted a variety of your fellow opposition members. I think it is hard for people to realize how difficult it is to overthrow a dictatorship or autocracy. And it is extremely dangerous sometimes. Many of your colleagues have either been in prison and abused or forced into exile. You yourself, Maduro issued a new arrest warrant for you last week, so you have to be careful where you travel. Your colleague and senior advisor, Demosthenes Quijada, who's here with us tonight, he was arrested and put in prison on false charges for almost half a year till his release was negotiated. He was tortured. He was kept in different rooms, one of them so small, had no window. It wasn't enough space to stand up, and there wasn't even enough space to lay down on the ground. So I admire you for your courage and what you're doing. Tonight, what I really hope is, I think our audience already knows the horrors and the disasters of the Chavez and Maduro regime. I really want people to get an idea of you and what you have done and what has worked and what hasn't worked for the opposition, and maybe what are the possibilities going forward. As Jose mentioned tonight, most people in the United States or in the world got to know you in January 2019 when you were selected by the National Assembly to be the interim president until free and fair elections could be held again. That's when most of the world got to know you, and probably the second time the world got to know you is April 30th, 2019. And maybe you could talk us through that, tell us how you describe it. You organized an uprising, protests, calling people to the streets. You went to an Air Force base, famous Air Force base near Caracas, with some National Guard members there. I think it was at that day was maybe the most hopeful a lot of the Venezuelan community had been in many years, that maybe this could be an end to the regime. But unfortunately, it didn't work out. And could you tell us about that day and maybe why it was so difficult to especially get the military on your side? And is a lot of that because of the huge amounts of money generals and senior leaders get from the government, a lot of the money they get from drug trafficking, running drugs from Colombia to Venezuela. What happened on April 30th, and how close did you get, and where did it fail?
Well, it's very high. Thank you, Ronan. Thank you, Mari, for the invitation to be with you in the World Affairs Council here in Houston. First, I have to warn you. I'm going to try my best English, but I have to warn you, it's a light version of the English. So I'm going to do my best to you, to everyone, to understand this difficult process back in Venezuela, our efforts to restore democracy, to restore full access to our rights, and that's what happened on April 3rd. An effort to achieve a good transition, an effort to restore democracy based on our constitution. That's very key thing in all our struggle. We always have basis on non-violent struggle because we believe in the respect of the life, of course, of the people, the rights of everyone, and also our duties to do our job. And our job is, back in Venezuela, restore democracy, try to recover our freedom, our rights. And on April 30, precisely, we talk with a key sector on any transition, not only in Venezuela, not only on Chile, many years ago, when they achieved a transition, peaceful transition, the armed forces. So we try to get close to that sector. It's an important sector, like every sector, of course, in the country. Teachers, nurses, students, young people, political parties, but all that sectors added to, of course, build a majority movement that can organize the people mobilize for our rights. In the end, the armed forces are who sustain, in this moment, that dictatorship. So, you maybe can achieve a transition without the armed forces, but not against, because at the end they have the control of the firepower, of the power of a country. So that's a constant when we are discussing about a possible transition to achieve democracy, to pass through an election, a primary, like we have to make with great effort of so many people in this room, by the way, and all over the world, and of course in Venezuela. So that's what happened on April 3rd. The conscience that every sector count, but and great effort to in a pacific way, because I want, and I have to say something. We participate in a together movement with armed forces, and that day we don't have a single casualties back in Venezuela, a single. Not even an injured person that day. Because we believe not only in our constitution, but also in a transition that can achieve not only democracy, of course democracy, but a stable process that can sustain the process. And the armed forces are going to be a key factor, not only in 2018, but also in all the process that came on 2024.
And again, I don't want to try and ask easy questions, but I also understand sometimes there are some questions you maybe can't answer directly. But maybe the next time a lot of Americans came to see you was in January 2020. You were a guest of honor for President Trump for the State of the Union address. You met with him privately in the White House. You met with Secretary Mattis before and with Secretary Esper. We hosted Secretary Esper, Donald Trump's second Secretary of Defense last year. And I think it might have surprised a lot of people how seriously President Trump was. He asked General Milley, he asked the Defense Department to come up with military options, potentially for Venezuela, a naval blockade, or even U.S. supplying and training Venezuelans to go back in and fight for your freedom. I know that puts you in a difficult position. You don't want to be seen as someone trying to start a civil war. But how do you assess that option that I have Venezuelan friends here tonight, and they'll quietly say, we would never normally want a foreign power to interfere. The United States has not always the best track record in Latin America, but they say, Ronan, if we could have the Marines come in here and give our country back, we would accept that and we would take that. What is your, I suppose, position on the use of military force?
I have to answer this question with the tools that we need to achieve a democracy back in Venezuela. And for us, for recovery democracy, we need not only the main thing, that is what we can do back in Venezuela, build a majority movement, put very clear all over the world what are our main asks, free and fair election, achieve a transition, make possible the end of the usurpation of the Maduro regime that in this moment still have political prisoners back in Venezuela. Today, Roland Carreño, who is a journalist back in Venezuela, a friend of mine, and a lot of people here that are Venezuelan, is still in jail with other 300 Venezuelans. So, in Venezuela, when we face the dictator regime, and I am going to use a metaphor that was useful yesterday. Imagine you have to play football. Are you football fans? I mean, what do you need Or soccer, okay. Very good. Are you Messi fan?
Yes.
Later we talk about that. Just what do you need to play football or soccer? Basically, a field, maybe football, of course, a team, cameras to transmit that game, a referee who have control of the rules of the game, right? So imagine back in Venezuela, and very difficult field, like this. And when your team, you make a team, a good team, the quarterback sent to jail because it's good. No, you can play. You're going to jail. And the one who defend the quarterback, exiled. The second one, quarterback, tortured because it's good. So we play in that field, Ronan, back in Venezuela. Yeah. We don't have media in Venezuela to transmit, not even the game, to communicate what happened back in Venezuela. So we need to look for tools to get balance the field. We Venezuelans don't want to anybody make a field goal for us, no. But we need help to balance that unfair field that we have to play. But we have to play. We have to. It's our duties. I want to, my little two girls grown up in Venezuela. I want to get back to Venezuela. So when we see the military option or the sanctions or ICC, International Criminal Court, or the Pan American Court, we see tools. And if you ask me why in the past 17 years, any pro-democratic movement around the world, not only Venezuelan movement, Nicaraguan, Belarus, Cuban, of course, as you know, maybe Myanmar, or all in the Arabic movement, not even one in 17 years achieved the transition. Why? Because it's very difficult to us, not only to Venezuelans, get balance on the course. So, and you say, why? Let's suppose this. The International Criminal Court make a verdict that say Maduro is committing crimes against humanity. Who has the force to force that decision? The law enforcement. If any judge in this country make a decision, that decision for sure happen. Right? The problem that the movement, the democratic movement around the world, and also the Venezuelan movement have, we don't have the law enforcement. I mean, the International Criminal Court has a process against Maduro. This regime that torture people in this moment, that forced 8 million Venezuelans to flee from our country. And this kind of regimes, dictators, knows that the credible threat, that is a term, as you know, taken from nonviolent struggle, the threat is not longer credible. That's why we saw what happened in Nicaragua in 2021. If Maduro, look, and Ortega kidnapped the quarterback, the linebacker, the camera guy, the referee also. What do you think the incentive to Maduro? Hey, to Putin or Hamas. What are the incentives that we, the international community, are showing to this kind of regime? And why I took so long to explain the military option, the law enforcement, or that tool to make possible a decision. And please saw that like a tool. Because if you make a poll in any country of the world, and you ask this question, do you prefer peace or war? What do you think are the possible answer at that poll?
Yeah.
99% prefer, incredible, 1% prefer war. Incredible.
Yeah.
But 99% prefer peace. I want peace. You want peace. So if we say, Ronan, yes, we are,
Yeah.
yes, of course, with that, what do you think the people are going to say? Of course, you are a war person. You want to murder innocent people. And that's not the case. We want to save people from starvation, from political prison. But we have to build, first, a majority movement that can make goals, that can pass through obstacles, that can communicate effectively and in an effective way, because we're treated with persons, with human beings that suffer, that they worry about his family, and that's a main thing in a non-violent movement, in a democratic cause. So that's why we need help, Ronan. We need help from the United States, Canada, European Union, not to vote for us, no, to help us to level up the field and make credible, again, the threat against dictatorships. And 17 years since the last pro-democratic movement achieved a transition,
Yeah.
I think it's a good moment to reflection about the tools, that the international community have to contain, to contest, and to help save people. So, I hope that answered your question.
It does. And I also understand if you definitively don't want to
I have to use a lot of metaphor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Some people, understandably, maybe they think of you, they think of President Zelensky in Ukraine. You're both young, personable, energetic, smart leaders who are willing to dedicate a lot for their people, to protect their countries. You both have faced the incredible danger of the power and the threat of a dictatorship, of authoritarians. You've had to deal with Maduro, but Zelensky has to deal with Vladimir Putin. When I look at Ukraine, or I talk to Ukrainian Consul General here, in Houston and others, I think the two most immediate concerns for a lot of for Ukraine is, one, can we keep the support of the United States and the European Union, both financially and in terms of the weaponry they need to defend themselves against Russia? Because if that goes away, they'll be conquered. But maybe that's the one thing they will all talk about, but maybe the second most important thing is Zelensky's battle against corruption. In this last year, we've seen high-level people that he's dismissed and fired from his deputy defense minister, generals, for corruption. He knows if our government is seen as corrupt, we'll lose the support of the Ukrainian people, and we'll lose the support of the Americans, of the Europeans, and we won't get the money, we won't get the weapons. Obviously, corruption is a factor everywhere. It's a factor in the United States. Maduro and his henchmen live off of corruption, but there also have been concerns within the opposition. And I wonder, how do you address that? In 2019, there were charges that there were 9 opposition lawmakers who quietly wrote a letter actually to the U.S. Treasury Department on behalf of somebody who was violating sanctions. Presumably, maybe they got paid for that. There have been other accusations against other people in the opposition. How do you defend those charges, especially from Maduro, who say Guaidó and his people and the opposition are corrupt too? And how do you convince, especially the Venezuelan people, that is a factor you're addressing?
That's two boards of the same path to action. The first one, when you are public, in public function, you have to be transparent, you have to be accountable for your action, for everything. I mean, you are a public figure. And when we are in function, also the critics, the attacks, not are for you, are for the share, are for your function. I mean, not every, but most of our political that I met, when people criticize him or something like that, they took very personal, like he were attacked. You can't do that. You have to assume the critic, and you have the duty to respond because you are in a public function. So that's the main thing. We do a lot of effort, and I want to use that question and that example to explain how function the regime. They took these 7 deputies. Okay. If I can forget, I can remember clearly, and they start like a movement in 2019 that they say the region's rebellion, because Guaidó can make another year in the National Assembly, and they start a very weird position. In 2019, one of that things that was that letter, and Carlos, I don't know his last name, but is the partner of Alex Saab. Alex Saab, maybe you don't know that name, is a partner from that guy, and the one who saved the money for Maduro. Alex Saab is in jail in this moment in the US because he helped Maduro to launder a lot of money from the food of the people in Venezuela. And he bribery, the correct word, yes, 7 deputies to try to see them like members of the opposition. We are maybe 210 deputies. Over there is Sergio Vergara, who is in exile. Thank you for being here, Sergio. 3 years on exile. We are maybe 200 congressmen and congresswomen back in Venezuela. And the dictator only took 7. Okay. And they trying with them to make bad publicity. All the situation with post-truth. We're going to talk about communication without cameras in the game, how to make it possible. So we denounced that deputies. We beat that fake movement, but in 2020, they militarized the Congress. They didn't allow me to get into the Congress with the same narrative, that the deputies don't want to vote for me to be re-elected in the parliament. So it's not only the accusations, it's not only the communication, it's all a narrative that kind of regime used to attack. Aside, you have to be transparent. You have to make the possible to be accountable. But it's a two-way course of action because they act, they learn fast, and they want not only the annihilation, physical annihilation of the opposition, also the moral annihilation, because they can allow different reference. I'm asking this week why in this moment, I have 5 months in exile in this moment, again Maduro attacked me.
Yeah.
Red alert on Interpol, another arrest order for me. Why? They can afford reference.
Yeah.
They need the moral annihilation. And the accusation in this moment was, I stole $19 billion. Heard the number. Minutes ago, a fact-checking page, I'm looking in this moment, the fact-checking page, you can search on internet, of course. If you see, it's a false accusation in the web. Of course, it's a bad accusation.
Yeah.
But how many people see the fake news?
Yeah.
Maybe 1 million. And the media
Yeah.
took the false accusation from the prosecutor in Venezuela and say Juan Guaidó is investigated by how many persons do you think saw the acceleration or the fact-checking page on internet? Not even 10,000.
Wow.
So it's again, we have an unfair field. We have no media to communicate, so we have to make a constant effort to communicate, to stop the act of the regime. And I'm finished with this. Adi Valero was a deputy from Mérida. Where is Maria?
She's not here tonight.
Okay.
But yeah, but.
Maria is from Mérida. Mérida is the name of my second little girl, by the way. Adi Valero, she's deputy from Mérida. These bad guys came to her house back in Mérida in 2019, December 2019, and said to Adi, Adi, we're going to pay you $700,000 for your vote. You don't have to make anything. You only have to go on January 5th, 2020, and don't vote for Guaidó for be re-elected for president. And we know this because Adi, of course, said to us, Adi have the integrity to say no. Adi has cancer in that moment. And these guys say to Adi, hey Adi, you're going to die. Take the money. Take that money and give to your sons. They can't give you anything. And Adi say, no, I don't gonna sell my country. I don't wanna sell my values. Adi died in 2020. With his integrity intact. With other almost 200 deputies that can move. Deputies who have done money in this moment. And that we have to face, to every day to contain that kind of regimes, his fake news, his propaganda, to pursue, of course, democracy and freedom back in our country. I'm sorry, I have the best thoughts about Adi and his integrity, and she is an example to all of us.
And the $19 billion, you didn't buy a private jet. So I'll let everyone know you flew to Houston on United in economy. So just another difficult situation you face. In the council, we've all tried to highlight the tragedy that was happening in Venezuela, complete collapse of the economy, of society, of the political structure, 8 million refugees, the second largest, or sometimes maybe more, the Syrian refugees in the population. In the last few years, what's made it even harder is the rising threat of China. Last year, especially a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now we have this horrific attack by Hamas in Israel. One of the issues with Ukraine was we actually, 2 weeks after the invasion, we were supposed to host Carlos Vecchio, your ambassador here in Houston. And I spoke to him, and they said, Ronan, we're very sorry, but we have important things going on in D.C. right now. And I know some of that's regarding how do we negotiate this new world order. And Venezuela will be a long time before they can produce a lot more oil. But maybe the United States is really concerned about Putin. He's the biggest devil. Maduro is a bad devil. But our biggest threat is, stabilizing global oil production and prices. And do you feel the United States and the West was willing to maybe make deals with Maduro? Chevron has gone back, and it's now producing more oil in Venezuela. Can you talk about, do you feel like maybe you've been abandoned? Or could you tell us about these talks that are both disclosed and undisclosed in Mexico and Doha and Qatar, in terms of what is the United States and the West doing to help you? And how much, I'm not sure how much you're able to say about these talks between the opposition, the United States, and Maduro's regime. What is happening there?
It's a wide question.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No,
we
it's
just
okay.
don't have a lot of time.
Yes,
so,
it's okay. Russia have the same oil that have Venezuela. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with make some business with Putin? Mm-hmm. Maybe not, because you are financing a war. Yeah. Maduro in this moment is the closest ally, not only for Putin, also Hamas, Iran, in America. The closest ally. And he said that. Yeah. He don't even occult or maybe in other side mm-hmm. put that declarations. Yeah. Maybe 2 or 3 persons in all the continent don't accuse mm-hmm. or maybe point the terrorist attack on Israel. Mm-hmm. And you may, what? Maduro was one of 3 or 4 people who have in charge of any office mm-hmm. in the continent. So I came from an oil state. Mm-hmm. We are very practical in that way. The world needs energy. The Venezuelan want to sell our oil to get better pay to the teachers, mm-hmm. to rebuild the schools, to rebuild our hospitals, the oil sector also, because we are producing maybe 700,000 barrels a day in this moment. Mm-hmm. We are supposed to produce maybe 6 million, 7 million in this moment. So it's very paradoxical because Putin is the closest ally for Maduro, right? What is the asset, the main product that Putin sells? Oil. So Putin, in the economical view, is our competition for our product. Mm-hmm. So we want to recover our oil sector. Mm-hmm. We want to use that money to rebuild our country, to pay well to the teachers. In this moment, a Venezuelan teacher earns $15 a month. Listen to that. If you want to make an empathy exercise with Venezuelan people, leave tomorrow with $15, please. Not the month. That will be torture for you. Just tomorrow. You know why Venezuelans work millions of kilometers, thousand, I'm sorry, it's very exaggerated, say millions. We don't go to the moon. But thousands for rich opportunities. So it's a naive thesis, I have to say. Think if you only leave sanctions to Maduro, you could stop the migration or you could recover the oil sector in Venezuela. It's a naive thesis or a bad approach to a solution, not only to Venezuelans, but also to energy sector, to the issue of migration in this country in this moment. The best that we can do in a practical way is recovery democracy. Why? Because if I tell you, or any one of you, that took all your savings in this moment and invest that in Venezuela, what do you say?
No way.
No way. Why? Because you don't have confidence in the system. It's basic. The untouchable things, in some cases, are the most powerful things. Confidence, the main engine for the economy. The confidence in a system. So, the correct thesis, Ronan, to approach the oil sector in Venezuela, in the world, is to make progress in the rule of law, in stabilized countries like Venezuela, to help democratic movement to level, balance the field to make it, and in that way, all the private sector can invest in Venezuela, increase the oil sector, and this last thing in this team. We can do a thesis, a complete thesis about this, because we have talk about the incentive that we talk in the last minute also, but the exercise on Russia.
Yeah.
You approach for several years with Putin in an economic way, right? Let's make business with Putin. Let's build a gasoduct, right? What happened? It was a good idea. We can discuss a lot of. So we need to make progress on basics, right? Rule of law back in Venezuela. Make a confident sector, and the next time I hope to be here and ask you, do you invest your money back in Venezuela? I hope you say yes.
Okay.
And in that moment, we have not only a good approach, sino the correct one. Hey, happened the same thing in Nicaragua, in Cuba, or Belarus. So if the United States want to make some progress on the oil sector and make a confident provider of energy, again, we need to be confident with our partner. Putin, for us, not only in an ideological way, of course, it's a bad way to approach, but also in the economic way, Russia is not the best ally to Venezuela. We compete in the sector, compete with our asset. So we have to make progress on our democratic sector.
And I'm going to, one question is kind of transition to the audience questions, and I know we'll have questions and you'll discuss the primary election. Maria Corina Machado kind of resumed front runner. But in terms of the end game, removing dictatorships is very hard, and the times where they have left without a civil war, it's usually because an ugly and kind of negative, dark deal has been made. You think of the Shah in Iran, repressive dictator for a long time. A new repressive regime came, but the United States helped him get out.
Myanmar.
The United States helped him get out. They let him keep his money and his people around him keep their money. Marcos in the Philippines, same sort of thing. He walked away with suitcases full of money and jewels, and his wife had to leave a few thousand pairs of shoes. But we helped him get out from American Air Base and go to Guam. As hard as it might be to consider, if it would be a way to country to get to a new stage, would you consider Maduro and his regime leaving and not facing prosecution for their human rights abuses, and maybe even keeping many of their millions of dollars? And then if you or Maria Corina or Leopoldo or Enrique Capriles or anyone is able to lead Venezuela a few years from now, what needs to be done to prevent another Chavez in 10 years? And Chavez the first election was legitimate. He was legitimately popular, elected in 1998, started in 1999. But even though he had staged a coup in 1992, the people knew he's not going to be a Democrat. He is willing to take power by force. I think many of the poor, desperate people in Venezuela felt this small middle class, this very small elite, has never looked out for us. They've never tried to help us. We barely have good jobs or food, and they elect Chavez. How do you prevent the next Chavez? And what are you willing to do to negotiate the removal of Maduro?
Ronan doesn't have any easy question.
No. I warned you. Yeah.
So, talking about Chavez in 1998, 1999, I was only 14 years or 15 years in that moment. Jose, thank you for your introduction. When the force of nature forced me to leave my home in 1999. Back in La Guaira in Venezuela. That night, by the way, Chavez was approving his constitution. And I say his constitution because part of his main proposition to the people was a new constitution that guarantee the rights of the people. All that was lie. He was only being populist to the people to achieve the power. That night that my people was dying in La Guaira, he doesn't stop the election. And I was young in that moment, 14, 15 years old. And my question was why they don't stop an election to save people, my neighbors, my students, fellows in the school, because they didn't interest the people. They interest the power. And they use the word people rights to abuse of the people and the power. So I make this reflection because we're in 2007, we defend the Constitution, like when we were in the student movement. And yes, Jose, I became politic because I want to defend our people, not only from La Guaira, but for our right. Nobody else has to die in vain. Or because the ambition of one person or anything. And if we want to prevent any populist in Venezuela or on any side, we have to be better servants. We have to make better public policies, not only for an election, not only to win an election, but also to make possible a country, a whole country. And I say to the young people, because when I make my decision, I was that young. So it's possible to make difference, to make the things in a way. It's not easy, I have to say. I mean, I'm here in exile. It's very hard, but it's possible to do it. So in 2007, we defend our constitution. Military, by the way, Raúl Baduel, defend that constitution. Again, the military sector put on the side of the people in that moment, and Chavez lose the election. So we need to make possible better servants, a correct communication with the people, to close the gap between that we say, the politician says, and that we do. In Latin America, that's a huge problem for the institutions, for the confidence of the people. And if the people lose faith on institutions, on policy, happen things like Venezuela. And I want to say this to the young ones. The democracy is always at risk. Always. My generation think that the democracy was herencia. How do you say herencia? Heritage. Like, we deserve it. Like, we got it. And we lost it. So the values, the rights are here to defend it, not to please them. Please give him a right. No. The rights are for defend it. So for us in this moment, and I connect all this situation, in 2024 we have an election. And in Venezuela, it's not an election. Because remember the field. Remember the front runners, banned from the competition. So we have to understand that for us, it's a window opportunity to mobilize, to organize our people, to talk with all the sectors, also the military sector, with the international community, to make accountable Maduro for his crimes, to make possible a solution for a transition back in Venezuela, and we need to make our basics. You're not gonna win. You're not gonna win any game, if you don't participate in, if you don't know the rules. And we face a dictatorship regime. So we have to understand they don't gonna concede us anything. They are disposed and ready to kill, to torture, to exile persons, to allow that 8 million Venezuelans flew from our country only to retain the power. But good news. We already build majority. We demonstrate not only in the street with nonviolent protest, but also in elections, like in 2015. We have to rebuild the unity front. We have to reunify all the opposition, and that's the primary. This October 22. It's not only an election again. It's not only to know who have more votes. We are in a dictatorship regime. We need to reunify the internal front, facilitate the communication with all the sectors. Something that use a lot this kind of regime is divide the opposition. They invest a lot, like the deputies back in 2019. We called in that moment los alacranes. I don't know how to translate alacrán. Scorpions, because the poison. So we need to reunify, to contend the divisions, the dispersion, to can rebuild the team. When we rebuild the team, remember, what happened to the good player? They're going to attack them. So we have to get ready also if they attack the front runner, Marcorina, anybody who win the election, and make our movement to, because Maduro cannot win any competitive election, any. He doesn't have the back of the majority. He doesn't have the people. So we have to see this election running as a potential and a big window opportunity to achieve and express the big majority of Venezuelans, and we have to understand that we have to legitimize the opposition and talk with all the sectors, armed forces, international community, look for, that's what you say, the people in common tongue said, the golden bridge.
Okay.
That the regime or those who sustains the regime can cross the golden bridge and leave the country. We are talking a lot about transitional justice. That is not forget. That is not only, it's not impunity. It's a way to build that bridges that we need to the regime understand they have an opportunity also to abandon the power. But we have a lot of work to do. It's not wishful thinking. I mean,
no, you're realistic.
Yeah.
If you don't, maybe I'll just combine some of these other questions very quick. And you've actually answered most of the audience questions already. They asked about energy. They asked about the upcoming elections.
What happens is you make only easy questions.
But just to maybe follow up a little bit more, we have the primary elections here,
yes.
August 22nd, and
October 22.
And it will be possible to vote in Houston and Katy, I think.
Yes.
So I encourage any of you who are eligible to vote. But related to the primary coming up, and then obviously the big potential full presidential election next year, Francisco asks, beyond nonviolent means that you've discussed, how do you ensure the Maduro regime carries out a free and fair election? Do we need election observers from the Organization of American States or European Union? Someone else asked a very similar question. Is a democratic presidential election possible in 2024? A lot of kind of similar questions in that vein. And then someone else asked, what will incentivize other players to run in the election? And are they potentially going to, what efforts can be made to divide the opposition? And then maybe lastly in that category, Sally asks, what hope can be left for Venezuelans to believe in democracy?
Well, the last one is a very important question. To us, again, the election is not only to come vote, to make possible that happen, we have a lot to do. In Venezuela, la unidad that we say, the unity, that's the way that we call the reunify of all the sectors and our also our political party. We back in 2015 when we won the National Assembly, just one party, political party, participate in the election, and that's because we know or we learn with our mistakes. In 2012, when Capriles was candidate, we participated with 15 political parties. And some votes get diluted from the participation. So we learned, and in 2015, all the opposition, so we can achieve the unity. We already done that in the past when we just won. And that's a powerful message. That's what say that message. We don't care about a small interest. I mean, the interest of the political parties is not longer important. The important thing is Venezuela. So that's the first thing. What are we doing primary? The important thing is the interest of Venezuelans and the region. I mean, you know what happened. Maduro is not only Maduro. Maduro is Putin, Maduro is Díaz-Canel, Maduro is Ortega, Maduro is Hamas. Maduro is a danger for the region. So we have revealed the unity in this moment. That's primary. That's the tool primary. And we have the opportunity to make possible at 2024. We can expect any good from the dictators, any. I mean, I'm in exile. Demosthenes Quijada, who is my advisor, was in jail 200 days. Demosthenes was tortured in jail. Please stand, Demosthenes. I'm sorry, I have to do this again. Demosthenes, in the jail aside, was my uncle, who heard the screams of Demosthenes being tortured. And why I'm saying this? I can assure you we don't naive about the regime. But we have to play with our tools. And the election in 2024 is a perfect opportunity, again, not to be naive, but to mobilize the powerful majority that we built all these years. And in that moment, it's a good opportunity to ask again to the armed forces. Whose side are you? With the people, with the majority, with the constitution, or with a criminal appointed by ICC, International Criminal Court? That doesn't gonna happen. I mean, in our way. We have to build that possible solution. We need, again, incentive, negotiation possibility with the United States. Get better on our tools for law enforcement. I mean, make accountable that kind of regimes. We need to do our basics. Reveal our majority, mobilize. I've been talking about that during the conversation. And talk with the sector. And the fifth element, I mean, the golden bridges. We have to get ready when they ask, and some of them ask. I've been there, April 3rd. Some of them will ask. We have to make the correct call. So it's a lot of work. When we talk about this, I here sitting thinking about how can we do it in a short term. But the good news is we already get some yards in advance. We know how to do some of the things in a democratic way, in in a positive way to the country and focus on the world. The last example, the Venezuelans know where I've been talking, Barinas. Barinas is the land of Chavez. In 20 years, no one person with a different last name, Chavez, win the Barinas state. No one in 20 years. In 2021, Freddy Superlano win Barinas. And what the regime say? No, he's banned, not from the competition, from the win. He win the election, he win the state. And the regime say, no, you don't gonna rule or assume the charge. We know what to expect from the regime. And what we do? We can do this, for example. Well, Freddy Superlano is the interim governor of Barinas. We do that in 2019, right? And it's a very quick exercise, unprecedented in the world, by the way, that we do in 2019. But we say this, okay, we're going to participate again in the election. What happened is 50% more participation in the next election, with no money to mobilize, to communicate the people, without cameras, without media, with nothing. 50% more. In 20 years, no one without the apellido, the last name Chavez. In 15 days, 50, we won 2 times Barinas. In only 50 days. So we have to expect the worst and be ready to answer that we already know that what the dictator and the human factor, never underestimate the human factor, is the more important factor in any human activity, of course. And that's what the leaders have to make the effort in this moment, to think about the country, our people, and make possible a transition using this powerful tool that all we have, that is our vote, our rights, and the rights we have to defend, stand for. That's the main thing to us in this moment in Venezuela. It is easy. It is easy. No, it's not. I have to say it in a humble way, but it's possible. Yes, of course it's possible. We make not only our best effort, we make everything to achieve a democracy, and in the profound way of see this our best option to the teachers, that they can live with $15 a month, to the oil sector in other way, to make possible not depend on the bad guys like Anna Paul Boone characterize all these kind of regimes. Again, if you can help us to raise the awareness that what happened in Venezuela, that help us. If the people forget Venezuela and pass to the priority 29 on the U.S. interests, we can balance the field, not alone. So in that way, we also need the help of international community in this near future, not only election, in this near future possible way to recover democracy, our life, our country, and the country for Mérida, my son, and Miranda, to rise again, to grow up with his people.
And maybe just a little way to think of the greatness and the wonderful country that it is. I had the pleasure of visiting it when I was a teenager. November 16th, the Venezuelan community is hosting a Venezuelan Night to Remember, celebrate the culture and the food and the people of Venezuela.
Please go.
All the proceeds will go to support Red M, which is a large nonprofit that fights sex trafficking. But a great way to support the Venezuelan people. So the Venezuelans are here. I encourage you and hope you all will get out and vote in the primary and vote again next year when you can. And honestly, I want to say to you, to Demosthenes, who spent time in prison and was tortured, to all the people who fought in the opposition, regardless of the party, I hope you all can stay together and work together. You obviously know if you go to the wrong country, you could be arrested and you could be the next person in prison and tortured or worse. I just want to say thank you very much for your years of courage and dedication to your country. And it was an honor for us to host you and wish you the best for you and your people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronan. And thank you.